At 16, my brother Michael stole $20,000 from our dad and framed me for it. My mother, Karen, believing him instantly, had me shipped to a behavioral rehab facility for 2 years. But she forgot my dad is an accountant, and he eventually found the truth hidden in Michael's room. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The first thing I remember from that day wasn't the accusation. It was the damp, sickly chill of my bedroom. I was 16, doubled over with the worst flu of my life, the kind that makes your bones ache and your skin feel too tight. I hadn't been to school in 2 days, and my world had shrunk to the space between my bed and the bathroom. I was vulnerable, exhausted, and completely unprepared for the moment my life would cleave in two. My mother, Karen, burst into the room without knocking. She never knocked, not for me, but this was different. Her face, usually composed and lightly made up for her real estate showings, was a mask of pale fury. "Get up, Emily," she snapped. The words were sharp, cutting through my fever haze. "Mom, what's wrong? I'm sick," I mumbled, trying to pull the comforter up to my chin. "I don't care if you're sick," she said, her voice dangerously low. She ripped the comforter off me, exposing me to the cold air. "Your father's work safe is empty, $20,000 gone, and you're the only one who's been home." It took a moment for the words to register. "What? I've been in bed, I didn't. What are you talking about?" "Don't lie to me," she shrieked, and that's when I saw him. My brother Michael, 2 years older than me, stood in the hallway just behind her. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the floor, adopting his classic, well-rehearsed, "I'm so disappointed" expression. He was the golden boy, the charming one, the one who could do no wrong. And he was the one who had, on occasion, asked me to cover for him when he borrowed small amounts from our parents. "Michael," I pleaded, my voice cracking. "Tell her I've been sick, I haven't left my room." Michael finally looked up, his eyes meeting mine. There was nothing in them. No sympathy, no recognition, just a cold, flat emptiness. "Mom found the empty bank withdrawal envelopes under your mattress, Emily," he said softly. It was such a blatant, absurd lie that I almost laughed. "What? No, she didn't, you're lying." "Enough," my mother screamed. "I found them this morning when I came to get your laundry. You've been lying to us for years, skipping school, and now this. Stealing from your own father." The accusations were dizzying. I'd never skipped school. I was the quiet one, the good student. Michael was the one with the speeding tickets, the mysterious new clothes, the friends his age who drove cars far too expensive for part-time jobs. But none of that mattered. My mother had her verdict. My father, Arthur, was still at his accounting firm, blissfully unaware that his life was being detonated. He was a man of numbers, of logic, of quiet integrity. He was also a man who trusted his wife, who believed in family unity above all else. When he got home that evening, he was presented with a story that was already written, edited, and published by my mother and brother. He was shown the evidence my mother had found. He looked at me, his face etched with a confusion and pain so deep it hurt me more than the accusations. "Emily," he said, his voice quiet, "just tell us the truth. Why?" "I didn't do it," I cried, the fever and the injustice making me hysterical. "Dad, please, you have to believe me. It was Michael. It had to be Michael." Michael, on cue, began to cry. "I can't believe you'd say that, Em. I've done everything for you." My mother stepped in front of him, a lioness protecting her favored cub. "That's enough, Arthur. She's a compulsive liar. She's sick in the head. I've already made the call." "What call?" my father asked, looking lost. "I'm sending her away," my mother declared. "I found a place, a behavioral rehab facility in Utah. They specialize in cases like this. Pathological lying, theft. They can fix her." I stopped crying. The fever, the chills, the accusations, it all evaporated, replaced by a cold, sharp terror that was worse than any illness. "Away? What do you mean, away? No, Dad, don't let her do this. I didn't do anything." My father, a man I adored, a man I trusted, just looked at the floor. He was outnumbered. The two people he loved most in the world were telling him a story, and he, a man of simple logic, couldn't comprehend the depth of the conspiracy against me. He couldn't see the malice. He just saw a broken daughter and a wife offering a solution. 2 days later, two large men I'd never seen before woke me up before dawn. They told me to get dressed. My bags were already packed. My mother stood in the doorway, her arms crossed, her face set like stone. My father was nowhere to be seen. He'd already left for an early audit. As they walked me out of the house I grew up in, I saw Michael watching from his upstairs window. For a split second, our eyes met. He wasn't crying anymore. He was just watching. I spent the next 2 years of my life in a place called Clear Path Academy, surrounded by barbed wire and girls with stories far darker than mine. I wrote letter after letter to my dad, letters that were screened and, as I later learned, often never even sent. I was Emily, the liar. Emily, the thief. The betrayal was worse than the confinement itself. My 18th birthday was a quiet affair. It was marked not by a party or presents, but by a signature on a release form. I walked out of Clear Path Academy with a single suitcase, the clothes on my back, and a silence so profound it felt like a physical weight. The girl who had been dragged out of her bed with the flu was gone. In her place was a young woman who had learned to survive by showing no emotion, trusting no one, and observing everything. My dad, Arthur, was the one who picked me up. The 2-hour drive from the facility to our house was almost completely silent. He looked older. There were deep grooves around his mouth, and his hair was more gray than I remembered. He kept clearing his throat, as if wanting to say 1,000 things, but settling for, "It's good to have you home, Emily." Home, the word felt like ash in my mouth. The house was the same, but everything was different. My room had been preserved, almost like a museum to the girl they'd sent away. My mother, Karen, gave me a brief, brittle hug. "Well," she said, pulling back, "you look healthier. I hope those people taught you a few things." "They taught me a lot," I said, my voice flat. Michael was there, too. He was 22 now, home from a semester at a different college. He'd apparently flunked out of the first one. He had the same charming smile, the same easy confidence, but his eyes darted around nervously when he looked at me. "Hey, Em, welcome back," he said, trying for casual. I just stared at him until he looked away. The family dinners that followed were masterpieces of denial. My mother and Michael chattered about his new business ideas, which always seemed to require seed money, and her success in selling a property in a difficult market. My father and I ate in silence. The theft, the $20,000, and the 2 years I had been erased from their lives were never mentioned. It was a gaping black hole in the middle of the dining room table, and we all just politely passed the salt around it. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. My father was an accountant. Not just any accountant, he was a forensic accountant. His entire career was built on the principle that numbers don't lie. People lie. Systems lie. But the numbers, if you look at them long enough, always tell the truth. He had been blinded by my mother's certainty and my brother's crocodile tears, but the man I knew, the real man I knew, was a man of ledgers and logic. One night, a few weeks after I'd returned, I was in the kitchen getting a glass of water. My mother and Michael were in the living room, watching TV. I heard her say, "I'm telling you, Michael, you need to be more careful. Your father is already stressed about his audits." "It's fine, Mom," Michael replied, his voice uncharacteristically sharp. "He'll never know. It's in the past, just like she is." I froze. He'll never know. It wasn't just the theft. It was something ongoing. The next evening, I found my father in his home office, staring at a spreadsheet on his computer, his face grim. The office was his sanctuary, a place of perfect order. "Dad," I said softly, hovering in the doorway. He looked up startled, then gave me a weak smile. "Emily, just balancing some accounts." "You look stressed," I said, taking a small step into the room. He sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "It's just work, some irregularities in a client's books, but that's not your problem. How are you? Adjusting." "I'm fine," I said. "Dad, about what happened before I left, I never." He held up a hand. Emily, please, your mother thinks it's best we don't dwell on it, that we all move forward. Did you ever look at your own accounts? I asked, the question so quiet I barely heard it myself. From that week. He stiffened. What do you mean? The $20,000. It came from your work safe, they said, but you kept withdrawal slips for everything. You always said, a paper trail is a map to the truth. Did you ever find the map? He stared at me, and for the first time since I'd been back, I saw the flicker of the man he used to be. The meticulous, detail-obsessed professional. The statements, for that quarter, he said slowly, they went missing from the safe along. With the cash, your mother and I assumed, well, we assumed you had destroyed them. I didn't, I said, but I bet they still exist, because Michael is arrogant, and Mom is a terrible liar. My dad looked at me, then at his computer, then back at me. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. The seed was planted. They had forgotten who my father was. They had forgotten that you can't lie to an accountant and expect to get away with it forever. The numbers were out there, waiting. To understand the betrayal, you have to understand what came before it. I wasn't just my father's daughter, I was his apprentice. From the time I was 12, I loved sitting in his office, watching him work. He taught me how to use accounting software, how to read a bank statement, how to spot the little red flags that other people missed. Numbers tell a story, Emily, he'd say, tapping a ledger. You just have to learn their language. He was proud of me. I was getting straight A's in math, and he'd already talked about me taking over his firm one day. Michael, on the other hand, hated it. He was my mother's son. He had her charm, her silver tongue, and her complete disinterest in anything that required hard, meticulous work. While I was learning spreadsheets, he was learning how to talk his way out of detention. While I was saving my allowance, he was borrowing money from my mom's purse, and, I suspected, my own. My mother, Karen, was the engine of this dynamic. She was a moderately successful real estate agent who valued appearances above all else. Our house had to be perfect, our family had to be perfect. Michael was her perfect son, handsome, popular, charismatic. I was her problem child, quiet, introverted, too serious. She would praise Michael for networking when he went to parties, but chide me for moping when I stayed in to read. You need to be more like your brother, Emily, she'd say, fluffing his hair. People like Michael, he's going to go far. The favoritism was so blatant it was almost suffocating. If Michael broke a vase, I was blamed for leaving it in his way. If Michael got a D on a paper, it was because the teacher didn't understand his creativity. But if I got a B, my mother would sigh and ask why it wasn't an A. The real antagonist, the one who pulled the strings, wasn't just Michael. It was my mother. Michael was a reckless, selfish boy, but my mother was the one who cultivated and protected that recklessness. She was the one who taught him that actions don't have consequences, that charm is a currency, and that someone else will always be there to clean up the mess. I later learned that in the weeks leading up to the theft, Michael had racked up a massive gambling debt. He'd fallen in with an older crowd from the community college, people who saw him as an easy mark with a well-off family. He owed $20,000, and the people he owed it to were not the kind who take, "I'll pay you later" for an answer. So he went to the one person he knew would help him, our mother. I can picture the scene perfectly. Michael, finally breaking down, his charm dissolving into a puddle of real fear. He confesses to Karen, tells her everything. And she, terrified for her perfect son's safety, terrified of the appearance of him being in trouble, formulated the plan. It was my mother who knew my dad was at a multi-day conference. It was my mother who knew he kept a large cash reserve in the work safe for emergency contracting supplies. A holdover from an older business model he never abandoned. And it was my mother who suggested the flu-ridden, difficult daughter in the next room would make the perfect scapegoat. Michael just had to do the deed. He stole the money and the corresponding bank statements. My mother did the rest. She found the empty envelopes under my mattress. She remembered all the times I had been secretive and moody. She found the website for Clear Path Academy, a place for troubled teens. She wasn't just covering for Michael. She was sacrificing me to protect him. She saw her 2 children, and in a moment of cold, reptilian calculation, she decided which one was disposable. When I returned from Clear Path, this dynamic was all still in place, just frozen under a layer of polite ice. My mother hovered around Michael, constantly asking if he needed anything, if his car was running okay, if he had enough money for his non-existent job interviews. With me, she was curt and dismissive. "Emily, you're just sitting there, make yourself useful," she'd snap if I was reading. "Don't slouch, Emily, they were supposed to teach you posture." She was the picture of polished composure, but I saw the cracks. I saw the way her eyes darted to my father whenever he entered the room. I saw the way she would instantly change the subject if he asked Michael a direct question about his finances. She wasn't just a mother protecting her son. She was a co-conspirator, desperately trying to keep the lid on a 2-year-old crime, and she was the one I truly despised. The first few months after my return were a suffocating fog of avoidance. My father was buried in tax season, my mother was busy with the spring housing market, and Michael was busy being Michael, sleeping until noon and going out all night. I got a job at a local library, stacking books, reveling in the silence and the anonymity. I started saving every penny. The turning point wasn't a single explosion. It was a slow burn, ignited by the question I had planted in my father's mind. He couldn't let it go. An unsolved equation, a book that wouldn't balance. One rainy Saturday in April, my father announced he was finally cleaning out Michael's old room to convert it into a proper home office, since his firm was downsizing and he'd be working from home more. "Michael," he called out, "I need you to clear out your old junk. Anything left by 5 o'clock is going in the trash." My mother immediately bristled. "Arthur, don't be so dramatic, I can help him sort it." "No, Karen," my dad said, his voice firm in a way I hadn't heard in years. "He's 22, he can clean out his own room." I watched from the hallway as Michael sulked, dragging his feet. My mother followed him upstairs, and I heard them whispering urgently. "Just get the important stuff," she hissed. "The box under the bed, just put it in your car for now." I slipped back to my room, the box under the bed. An hour later, Michael came downstairs carrying a duffel bag and a backpack. "I'm going to grab lunch," he announced to no one. My mother watched him go, her shoulders tense. That afternoon, I found my father in the room, surrounded by piles of old clothes, forgotten textbooks, and garbage. He looked exhausted. "I don't know why we kept all this," he muttered, tossing a broken video game controller into a trash bag. "Did you check under the bed?" I asked, my voice casual. He paused. He pulled a box out from there earlier, put it in his car, I think. "No," I said. "He pulled a box, but did you check?" I got on my hands and knees and aimed my phone's flashlight into the dusty space under the bed frame. Tucked way in the back corner, behind a loose floorboard I never even knew existed, was a small, flat, wooden box. It was a cigar box, one our grandfather had given him years ago. I pulled it out. It was locked with a tiny, flimsy padlock. "Emily," my dad said, his voice wary. "Don't, it's his." "He stole 2 years of my life," I said. I went to my old desk, retrieved a bobby pin, and jimmied the lock in under 10 seconds. It was a skill I'd learned at Clear Path. My hands were shaking as I opened the lid. Inside, there wasn't much. A few concert ticket stubs, a fake ID, and a small, folded stack of papers held together with a rubber band. My father took them from me. He unfolded them. His face went completely white. They were the missing bank statements, and tucked inside them were the original carbon copy withdrawal slips from his business safe. The dates on them were from the 3 days I had been bedridden with the flu. The total matched perfectly, $20,000. But that wasn't the trap, that was just the bait. The real key was what my father found next, at the very bottom of the box. It was another set of bank statements. These were newer, from an account I didn't recognize, in my mother's name. And on them, a series of monthly deposits, all labeled transfer from KA, and a series of corresponding monthly withdrawals for Michael rent. My father sank onto the edge of the mattress, the papers trembling in his hand. He understood. I didn't even have to say it. My mother hadn't just covered for Michael 2 years ago. She had been paying him. She had been funding his life, his apartments, his cars, all this time, using money she was siphoning from her own accounts. But why? "Dad," I said, pointing to the statements in his hand. "Look at her account number. Now look at the statements for your business, the ones from this year." He pulled his laptop from his bag, his fingers flying across the keys. He pulled up his business accounts. His face, already pale, turned a sickly, ashen gray. "She's been stealing from me," he whispered, "all this time." My mother, the real estate agent, had access to one of his smaller holding accounts, one he used for property taxes and escrow fees. She had been systematically skimming. Small amounts at first, then larger. She wasn't just paying Michael's rent. She was paying for his silence. She was paying to keep the original lie buried. My father, the meticulous accountant, had been betrayed by the one person he trusted with his books. The trap wasn't one I set. It was one my mother and brother had built for themselves, and they had just handed my father the key. My father didn't say a word. He just calmly placed the statements back in the cigar box, closed the lid, and walked downstairs. He put the box on the kitchen slammed and sat down at the table, his hands folded, and waited. I sat in the living room, my heart hammering so hard I thought it would break through my ribs. I could hear the garage door open. My mother and Michael walked in, laughing about something they'd seen at the store. "Arthur, what are you doing sitting in the dark?" my mother asked, her voice light as she flipped on the kitchen light. Then she saw the box. Her laughter died in her throat. "What is that?" "You know what it is, Karen," my father said. His voice was terrifyingly calm. It was his audit voice, the one he used when he had found fraud and was about to destroy someone's career. Michael saw the box and immediately started backing toward the door. I just remembered I have to." "You will sit down, Michael," my father commanded. Michael froze, then slumped into a chair at the table, his eyes wide with panic. My mother tried to bluff. "Arthur, you've been going through his things. That's his private property." "It stopped being private when it involved my bank accounts," my father said. He opened the box and slid the first set of papers, the original withdrawal slips from 2 years ago, across the table. "I believe these are yours, Michael." Michael looked at them and then at his mother, his face pleading. My mother scoffed, though her hand was trembling. "What is that? Old paperwork. This is ridiculous." "Is it?" my father said. He slid the second set of papers across the table. The statements from her secret account, the transfers. "And this, Karen, is this ridiculous too? How long have you been paying him to keep quiet?" My mother's face crumpled. The mask of the polished real estate agent dissolved, revealing the desperate, cornered woman beneath. I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me," my father roared, slamming his fist on the table. It was the first time I had ever heard him yell. "Don't you dare lie to me again. You've been stealing from me, from my business, to fund his lifestyle, to pay for his silence." "He needed it," my mother shrieked, finally breaking. "He made a mistake. He was a boy. Those people were threatening him. What was I supposed to do?" "You were supposed to tell me," my dad yelled. "You were supposed to be my wife. We were supposed to be partners. Not sacrificing our daughter." "She was out of control," my mother lied, grasping at straws. "She was a liar, she was. Difficult." "She was 16, my father shot back. "She was 16 and she had the flu, and you too, you conspired to frame her. You sent her to that place. For 2 years, 2 years of her life gone, so he wouldn't have to face the consequences." Michael, seeing his mother's defense crumbling, tried a different tactic. He started to cry. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I was stupid. I'll pay you back, I promise. Every penny." My father just looked at him with dead eyes. "You don't have a job. You don't have any money. You have nothing. Because she," he said, pointing at my mother, "has been enabling you your entire life. she made you this. I did it to protect him, Karen sobbed. I did it for my son. And what about your daughter? My father asked, his voice dropping to a whisper. He looked over at me, standing in the doorway. His eyes were full of a pain that mirrored my own. What about Emily? My mother finally looked at me. There was no remorse in her eyes. There was only anger. Anger that I had been the one to ruin her perfect world. She was always strong, my mother spat, as if that explained everything. She could handle it. That was the moment my father's heart truly broke. I saw it. The last bit of love or loyalty he had for her vanished, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. He stood up from the table. You didn't just lie, Karen, he said, his voice level again. You didn't just steal. You took my daughter from me. You let me believe she was a thief. You let me abandon her. He picked up the phone. Michael, if you leave this house, I will call the police right now and report the theft. Both of you, sit. He dialed. Hello, he said, his voice pure business. Yes, I'd like to schedule a consultation with your top divorce attorney as soon as possible. My name is Arthur Jensen. Yes, I'll hold. My mother let out a sound like a dying animal. Michael just put his head in his hands and wept. I stood in the doorway, feeling nothing but a vast, cold emptiness. The truth was out, but it didn't feel like a victory. The days that followed were a cold war fought in the hallways of our own home. My father moved into the guest room. He hired a divorce lawyer and a separate forensic accountant to audit his own life, his business, his personal accounts, everything. He was building his case, and he was using the skills I had always admired to do it. My mother, realizing her tears and excuses were useless, escalated. Her first move was to try and win me back to her side, to create a united front. Emily, honey, she said, finding me in the kitchen one morning. Her voice was syrupy, a tone she hadn't used with me in a decade. We need to talk. Your father is having some kind of breakdown. He's not thinking clearly. He's thinking clearer than he has in 2 years, I replied, not looking up from my coffee. He's threatening to destroy this family, she hissed, her fake sweetness vanishing. Do you have any idea what this will do to Michael? He could go to jail. Your father is being cruel. He's being cruel? I asked, finally meeting her gaze. I spent 2 years in a barbed wire compound in Utah, Mom. I had to earn privileges to use the phone for 10 minutes. I was strip-searched. I was forced to sit in isolation for non-compliance when I said I was innocent. And you did that to me to protect him from being grounded. Don't you ever talk to me about being cruel. She recoiled, her face twisting in anger. You ungrateful, after everything I've done. Yes, I said. After everything you've done, you're right, I am ungrateful. Her next move was to threaten my father. She tried to freeze their joint accounts, claiming he was the one who was unstable. But she had forgotten who she was married to. My father, the accountant, had already, quietly and legally, moved all of his business assets and personal savings into new, individual accounts the moment he found the statements. The joint accounts were nearly empty. All she had access to was her own commission account, which, as my father's audit quickly revealed, was where she had been diverting the money she stole. She had, in effect, created a perfect paper trail of her own guilt. Michael, meanwhile, was a ghost. He was trapped. He couldn't leave the house for fear my dad would call the police. He couldn't stay because my father looked at him with such profound contempt that even Michael's thick skin couldn't take it. The final confrontation came a week later. My father had the full audit report. He called us all into the living room. He'd even called my aunt, my mother's sister, to be a witness. I wanted to give you one last chance to come clean, Karen, my father said, holding a thick, spiral-bound report. One last chance to tell the truth, apologize to your daughter, and agree to my terms. My terms, my mother scoffed, are that you stop this insanity, we go to counseling, and we put this behind us. Here's what's going to happen, my dad said, ignoring her. He opened the report. You have, over the past 26 months, embezzled $42,800 from my business account. You disguised it as vendor payments and tax overpayments. But you sent it all to this account. He held up a statement, which you then used to pay for Michael's rent, his car, his credit card bills, and to give him a weekly allowance. My aunt gasped, "Karen, is that true?" "He's lying," my mother shrieked. It was money I was owed. From the business, I'm his partner." "You are not a partner in my firm, Karen," my father said coldly. "You are a real estate agent who has been systematically stealing from me. That is a felony. It's called embezzlement, and it carries a prison sentence." He then turned to Michael. "And you, the original theft of $20,000, that's grand larceny, also a felony. Your mother's actions since then make her an accessory after the fact, and your acceptance of the money makes this a conspiracy." "You wouldn't," Michael whispered, his face sheet white. "Dad, you wouldn't send your own son to prison." "You," my father said, his voice breaking with a sudden, raw fury, "stopped being my son when you watched your sister be dragged out of this house by strangers. You stood at that window and you let her go to save your own skin." My mother finally completely broke. It was not a cry of remorse. It was a howl of pure, animalistic rage. She lunged at my father, her hands clawed, screaming, "You've ruined us. You've ruined everything." My aunt and I had to physically pull her off him. It was ugly and pathetic and final. The spell was broken. The image of the perfect family was shattered. My aunt, who had always been on my mother's side, looked at her sister with horror and disgust. "Karen," she whispered, "what have you done?" My father just straightened his shirt. "Here are my terms. You will sign the divorce papers. You will get nothing. No alimony, no house, no assets. If you fight me, this report," he tapped the audit, "goes to the district attorney. Both of you will be charged." The final showdown wasn't a public event. It was something far more intimate and devastating. A week after the audit confrontation, my father called me and his lawyer to his new office. My mother and Michael were there with their lawyer, a cheap-looking man who seemed perpetually sweaty. This was the divorce mediation. My father and his lawyer, a sharp woman named Ms. Hayes, had laid out the terms. My mother would walk away with her car, her personal effects, and her own, now heavily scrutinized, bank account. The house would be sold, and my father would get 100% of the proceeds. He would also retain 100% of his business and all retirement accounts. In exchange for her signature, he would not press criminal charges for the embezzlement. "This is extortion," my mother's lawyer blustered. "My client is entitled to half the marital assets." "Your client," Ms. Hayes replied, not looking up from her notes, "is a felon. We have bank records, sworn affidavits, and a full forensic audit proving she has embezzled a significant amount of money over 2 years. Mr. Jensen is, in fact, being generous. If she wants to argue this in court, our first witness will be the DA." My mother's lawyer sputtered. My mother just stared at my father, her eyes burning with a hatred so pure it was almost impressive. "And what about him?" she spat, jerking her chin toward Michael. "What about the original $20,000? "I'm glad you brought that up," my father said. He slid a single piece of paper across the table. It was a promissory note. "Michael will be paying me back the $20,000 plus interest compounded over the last 2 years. He will also be paying for the $120,000 it cost to send Emily to that facility. Total, $140,000. He will get a job, and he will have 40% of his wages garnished until it is paid in full. If he misses a single payment, I file a police report for the original theft." Michael looked like he was going to be sick. "A job garnish? I can't pay that. That's my whole life." "It's a bargain," my father said. "Emily lost 2 years. You just lose some money. It seems you got the better end of the deal." This was the moment. My mother, seeing her golden boy finally, truly cornered, had one last card to play. She turned to me. "Emily," she said, her voice dripping with venom, "are you going to let him do this? To your own brother? He made a mistake, but he loves you. We all love you. You can stop this. Tell your father to stop. We can be a family again." All eyes in the room turned to me. My father, his lawyer, even Michael, who looked at me with a pathetic, desperate hope. They all thought I was still the quiet, broken girl who came back from Utah. I stood up. I walked over to the table where my mother sat. I looked down at her, at this woman who had sacrificed me without a second thought. "A family," I said, my voice quiet, but it cut through the room. "You don't know what that word means. You didn't just let them take me. You sent me. You packed my bags. I wrote you letters. I wrote dozens of letters begging you to believe me, begging you to come get me. The staff at Clear Path told me you had returned them, unopened, with a note that said, 'She needs to complete the program.' Did you?" My mother's face went blank. She hadn't expected this. "Did you, Mom?" I pressed. "It was, for your own good," she stammered. "No," I said, "it was for his good." I turned to Michael. "You stood at that window and you watched me go. You're not my brother, you're just the coward who lived in his room. You want to know what the worst part of that place was? It wasn't the barbed wire. It was knowing, every single day, that the people who were supposed to love me most believed I was a monster. That you," I pointed at my mother, "created that monster to hide the real one." I then looked at my father. "Sign the papers, Dad." Then I turned to Michael. This was my moment of triumph. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just smiled. A cold, flat smile I'd perfected at Clear Path. "Get a job, Michael," I said. "I hear the fast food place on the highway is hiring. You'd better start saving." My mother let out a strangled sob. Michael just stared, defeated. He picked up the pen and, with a shaking hand, he signed the promissory note. My mother, seeing it was over, grabbed her own pen and scribbled her name on the divorce papers, her face a mask of bitter defeat. I walked out of that office, took my first deep breath in 2 years, and for the first time I didn't feel broken. I felt free. The downfall was swift and absolute. My mother, without my father's income to support her, couldn't afford their high-powered lawyer and certainly couldn't afford her lifestyle. The house sold quickly. She ended up in a small, sad-looking condo on the bad side of town. Her real estate license was put under review after my father's firm quietly filed a professional complaint, complete with the evidence of her embezzlement. She wasn't just divorced, she was ruined. Michael, true to form, tried to evade his new reality. He missed his first 2 payments. My father, true to his word, filed the police report for the original $20,000 theft. A warrant was issued. Michael, terrified, was suddenly very motivated. He got a job, a real one, working nights at a warehouse, and a second one on weekends at a gas station. The garnishment began. T. He last I heard, he was living with my mother in that tiny condo. The two of them trapped in the toxic, bitter world they had built for themselves. But this story isn't really about their downfall. It's about what came after. My father and I moved into a smaller, brighter apartment downtown. The silence between us, once heavy with unspoken pain, slowly became comfortable. We started talking, really talking. He told me about the guilt that consumed him, the shame of not believing me, of failing to be the father I deserved. "I'm an accountant, Emily," he said one night, his eyes filled with tears. "My job is to find the truth, and I miss the most important truth in my own home. I can never forgive myself for that." "I forgive you, Dad," I told him, and I meant it. "She fooled you. She fooled everyone. But you're the one who found the truth in the end. You're the one who came for me." He used the money from the house sale and the recovered funds to set up a college fund for me. I enrolled in the state university, majoring in psychology. I wanted to understand how people break, and more importantly, how they heal. I started going to therapy, real therapy, with a kind woman who helped me unpack the 2 years of trauma. My father, using his professional network, also filed complaints against Clear Path Academy. His investigation, combined with the testimony of other former students, triggered a state-level probe into their practices. The facility was shut down 6 months later for abuse, neglect, and fraudulent advertising. My father had ensured that what happened to me would never happen to another child there. Our life is quiet now, but it's real. We have dinner together on Tuesdays. We talk about my classes, about his work. He's teaching me how to invest, showing me his spreadsheets again. And sometimes, when I look at him, I still see the flicker of pain, the guilt he'll probably always carry. But I also see the man I always knew was there. The man of integrity, the man who believes that numbers and people and the truth are all that really matter. Karen and Michael are just a story we don't tell anymore. They are a balanced book, a closed case. My vindication wasn't just about them facing consequences. It was about me and my dad, two broken people, finding each other in the wreckage and building something new, something honest, and something unbreakable.